In this video, we'll do some ratio analysis for Kroger and Whole Foods. First looking at the liquidity ratios and then the asset management ratios or efficiency ratios. All right, the current ratio is the ratio of current assets to current liabilities. And if we go over to the balance sheet for these two firms, that's current assets. And that is current liabilities. So if we looking at the ratios, we can see that Whole Foods runs about $1.50 if we use the 2016 number, about $1.50 of current assets for every dollar of current liabilities, and it's only 80 cents of current assets for every dollar of current liabilities in the Kroger numbers. Now, that doesn't mean one's better than the other. All right, a lot of stuff you see online implies that, and it's not. They're different. All right, different doesn't mean better. It means different. If we go over and look at Kroger, their current assets in 2016 about $10 billion, and there's about $12.8 billion of current liabilities. If we look at what's in the current assets, a lot of inventory, more than half of it is inventory. If we look at what's in the current liabilities, what we see is a chunk of accounts payable, a bunch of short-term debt. Now, short-term debt is similar to long-term debt. It just means that you get a lower interest rate and then you have to refinance it every year. All right, so this would be, if you think in terms of adjustable rate mortgage being a short-term debt and a 30-year mortgage being long-term debt, yeah, these are riskier in the sense that the interest rate could go up, but the interest rate can go down, and that's what we've seen for the last 10 years. So it's a different way of doing business. Kroger has a bigger mix of short-term debt relative to long-term debt than our friends at Whole Foods. They have almost no short-term debt. The debt they do have is virtually all long-term debt. Doesn't make one better or the other worse. It just means that they're different. So when we look at Whole Foods, we can see that their current assets of $2 billion relative to only $1.3 billion of current liabilities. That's where they get the 1.5 or 1.47 current ratio. Isn't better, worse, it's just different way of doing business. And we also remember from the common size balance sheet, if we look at the mixture of current assets, Whole Foods, a lot of cash, about the same amount of receivables for both. They don't carry as much inventory. All right, so that's one of the contributors to Kroger's current ratio being higher, is they hold a relatively large amount of inventory, at least relative to Whole Foods. But it's the type of inventory that they hold that's probably more descriptive. All right, and Kroger also has a lot of current liabilities, a big pile of accounts payable. Well, it probably has to do with the type of stuff that they buy as much as anything else. All right, so if we get down here, the current ratio, or the liquidity ratios that we're looking at, Kroger's is pretty steady. All right, if you ignore 2012, it's right up there around somewhere between 0.75 and 0.8. All right, and Kroger and Whole Foods has actually decreased a little from the earlier years. The quick ratio is the current ratio except that inventory is taken out of current assets. You can see the big drop here at Kroger because so much of their current assets is actually inventory. All right, and with Whole Foods, inventory is just a lower part of it. So I would argue that Whole Foods is more liquid simply because they have more cash, but that isn't better or worse. Kroger is so much bigger, their business is so much more stable, they probably have less of a need for cash. And if you're buying a whole bunch of inventory and capturing economies of scale in your purchasing, well, that's a good thing too. So just a different business model. The cash ratio is cash per dollar of current liabilities. This is a lot of the textbooks say, yeah, well, it's cash you use to pay the current liabilities, and that's true because you do not pay them with current assets. You pay them only with cash. But Kroger is so large and generates so much cash on a week-by-week or a day-by-day basis, you have to look more at the cash flow coming in. That's what's going to actually fund the payment of the current liabilities. All right, so that's what we have for liquidity analysis.